and joining us now is Evan Bayh, former governor of Indiana, who also served in Washington for 12 years as a Democratic senator. Please welcome Senator Bayh.
Thank you, Frank. Be well.
I want you to grab your dolls, and I'm going to ask you to make a pitch to them for why Washington isn't broken unless you think that it is. Everyone at 50.
Well, Frank, unfortunately, I do think Washington is broken.
React, please.
I saw some of the responses to the previous debates, and there's some differences of opinion in the room. But my guess is that if we sat down and tried to work out solutions to some of the problems that are facing America among this group, we could probably get that done. But Congress right now is just so partisan, so ideological, they're unable to make the kind of common sense compromises that it takes to get the economy moving, to get the debt down, to get the cost of health care down. It's broken at a time when we can't afford that anymore. So regrettably, Frank, I think it's going to take ultimately all of us rising up and taking the system back to make the kind of progress America needs.
So Congress is broken.
Unfortunately, it is broken.
Is the Obama administration broken?
Well, the Obama administration isn't perfect, none are, but I think the president's doing his best.
But Congress isn't.
No, they're doing their best too, but they're trapped in a system of, there are 535 members of Congress, Frank. They've all got to try and cobble together a principled compromise. The president can just speak for himself. The real problem we have is that too many members of Congress, and frankly, it represents some of us, they think of themselves first as liberals or conservatives, Democrats or Republicans, rather than as Americans first. And you can look at this group of leaders here, the statesmen and women that we've had in the history of our country. Each and every one of them stood for things that they believe passionately in. But at the end of the day, they were willing to take some progress rather than none. We've got too many people in Washington right now who take an all or nothing approach. You take that kind of approach very often, you're going to end up with nothing.
Do you agree with him?
Yes.
You agree with him? Yes. Go ahead.
We seem to be locked into a kind of a two-party dictatorship. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's true we have two parties, and too often they're polarized, and they're unable to find common ground, and that's a shame. I think what we need to do is to hold both parties accountable and say to both Democrats and Republicans, look, we understand you're part of a party. That's fine. We understand you have strong principles and probably some ideological underpinnings. We respect that too. But at the end of the day, you got to put the country ahead of your party and ahead of your ideology. If you don't, we'll vote for someone else.
Well, we've been doing that for 4 years now. All Americans have been saying that. It's the division in Congress, and nothing gets done. As a matter of fact, they get even more divided. And we're at a point now where there's absolutely nothing taking place.
Getting along seems to be that the more conservative people, there's like they're playing chicken with the more progressives, and the conservatives have to blink, and they have to give in, and that's called compromise and getting along.
Go ahead.
And it's enough already.
We can't just blame the conservatives. Prior to 2010, we had liberals in office as well, and then at the midterms we switched it, and we're still having the gridlock that we had previously.
Historically, ever since the nation's been born, we've had two different parties who have the same system for like over 200 years. What's changed recently to make politics so divided that they can't seem to find a compromise? It just seems that way. So
well,
anybody wants to.
This gentleman, Steve, is correct. We have had divisions in the past. But the difference in the past is, I mean, look, our country wouldn't exist. The United States of America itself was a compromise between big states and small states, northern states and southern states, et cetera. They eventually had to come together and say, you know what? Being one country and one people is more important to us than some of our differences. We don't have that as much today in Washington. Now you ask why. In the House of Representatives, we've had what's called the gerrymander. So out of 435 members of the House, no more than 80 probably of the districts are actually very competitive. The real races there are in the primaries. So if you're a Democrat and your real race is in the primary, you don't have an opponent, what do? You move left. In the Republican Party, you move to the right. So there aren't nearly as many people in the middle where it takes to really try and fashion some principled compromises. In the Senate, just let me finish, Steve. In the Senate, unfortunately, it's two things. The role of big money, and the interest groups now can contribute millions and millions of dollars, number one. And number two,
agree with that?
Number two, the caucus system, where, to my surprise, when I arrived in the United States Senate, I was informed on the first, you're part of a team. We expect you to be loyal to the team, to stay with the team. Don't be independent. Don't vote for yourself. If you do that, well, we'll do things that punish you for that. And so that system needs to change, too.
Did Harry Reid punish you?
Well, I was known as being a problem child, and there are practical consequences for that. Sometimes you don't get on the committee to work on the issues that you like. Sometimes your bills don't get brought up for a vote. I mean, there are consequences to going your own way. And so there's a constant tension. You always got to do what you think is right. That's what you're paid to do. But you can't become irrelevant and ineffective. So you have to try and strike that balance.
Go ahead.
In my opinion, the problem is the leadership. It's poor, it's lacking. Obama has this every speech he gives, it's a us versus them mentality, Democrats versus Republicans mentality. It's this gang type of warfare that he's fostering. He's made it worse, honest to God.
May I ask you a question, sir?
Of course.
The Democrats and the Republicans, basically everybody in Congress believes in democracy, correct?
As far as I know, they do,
Okay.
yes.
Just out of curiosity, why is it when the nation is basically speaking up very loudly over these major affairs, and overwhelmingly so by large proportions, that you guys are basically ignoring and shoving stuff down our throat?
Well, remember, I've been retired for a year and a half, so it's I'm not there anymore, Greg. So it's,
I figured you might have an answer to this question.
I got kind of
because
fed up with it, too.
Greg,
So
the senator stopped shoving about a year and a half ago.
You know, I can tell you, Greg, look, when I was governor of my state for 8 years, I'm a member of the Democratic Party. My state Senate was Republican all 8 years. The House went back and forth. I realized pretty quickly if we were going to get anything done, we had to figure out a way to work together. Now, did we agree on everything? No. Sometimes we just couldn't agree, and sometimes we had knockdown, drag-out fights. But at the end of the day, we realized we'd been hired by the same people to try and solve their problems in practical terms. That's just not taking place right now in Washington very much.
And I'm going to say something as a personal prerogative. I've known this man now for 15 years. People call him governor, people call him senator. I call him a statesman.
Oh, thank
This
you.
is someone who's different, and I hope that you see that in what he has said. Senator, thank you very much. Later in the program, you'll see the 2 best attack ads of the campaign so far and what the Supreme Court decision could mean to your health care. And coming up next, deficit, debt, out-of-control spending. Are you going to pay more taxes in 2013? 2 leading members of Congress debate your future, so stay tuned. Thank you, Senator.